All right. Good evening, football fans. Big Al here on this Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. And welcome to week number 3 of the week that was. As we'll take a look at all the statistical numbers from all 16 games from week number 3 of the 2023 NFL season. And stick around till the end for my week 4 power rankings. That's coming up at the end, so stick around, like I said. All right, let's jump right into week number 3, the week that was. Well, first, let's take a look at some of the highlights from this past week. The Miami Dolphins made history, nearly dropping 70 points on the Denver Broncos. The Colts, Texans, and Cardinals all pull off week 3 shockers. And the Packers with a 18-point comeback in the fourth quarter to stun the previously unbeaten Saints. But we're going to start off with Thursday Night Football, as always, with the San Francisco 49ers hammering the New York Giants without Saquon Barkley 30-12. The 49ers are now 3-0 on the season, and they will host the Cardinals this week, while the New York Giants drop to 1-2, and they will play host to the Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football. All right, let's start with the San Francisco offense. 76 plays ran for 441 yards, averaging 5.8 yards per play. 37 passes for 300, averaging 8.11, and 39 rushes for 141, averaging 3.62. The Niners had 26 first downs in this game and 69 through 3 games. They finished 9 of 16 on third down for 56.3%. For the season, they're 17 of 38 for 44.7%. No fourth downs in this game, but they remain 1 for 1 on fourth down this season. They had 6 penalties for 71 yards, and for the season, 23 for 213. Time of possession was 39 minutes and 10 seconds. The New York Giants offense ran 44 plays for 150 yards, averaging 3.41 yards per play. 33 passes for only 121, averaging 3.67. And they were limited to 29 yards on 11 rushes, averaging 2.64. New York had 10 first downs, which brings their season total to 50. They were 3 of 12 on third down for 25%, and for the season, 15 of 40 for 37.5%. The Giants also didn't have a fourth down in this game. They stayed 4 of 6 for the season at 66.7%. The Giants had 6 penalties for 37 yards, and for the year, 21 for 184. Time of possession, just 20 minutes and 50 seconds. The 49ers defense recorded 32 tackles. They now have 124. They added 2 more sacks to their season total of 8. Still no forced fumbles this year for the San Fran defense. 3 passes defense gives them 14. They added another interception on Thursday night. That brings their season total to 5. And there are no defensive touchdowns for the Niners. The Giants defense recorded 52 tackles. They now have 119. They also had 2 sacks in the game, their first 2 of 2023. No forced fumbles by the Giants defense either. They remain with 1. 4 passes defense brings their season total to 10, and they have no interceptions or defensive touchdowns. All right, the 49ers offense is now averaging 399 yards per game, 236.3 passing and 162.7 rushing. The Giants offense is averaging 253.3 yards, 165.3 passing, and only 88 yards rushing. The Niners defense is surrendering 258.3 yards per game through the first 3 weeks, 205.3 passing, and only 53 yards rushing. The New York Giants defense is surrendering 361.7 yards per game through the first 3, 223.7 passing on average, and 138 yards rushing on average. Closing line is San Francisco minus 10.5, and the over-under was 43. The two teams combined to miss the total by just 1 point. There were 42 points in this game, 591 yards, over 120 plays, averaging 4.93 yards per offensive play. I took the 49ers to win straight up and against the spread. Now to the Sunday schedule, starting off with the Detroit Lions thoroughly dominating the Atlanta Falcons 20-6. That's a bounce back game for Detroit following the overtime loss to Seattle in week 2. Both teams are now 2-1. The Lions play Thursday night at Lambeau Field against the Packers, while the Falcons play a road game against the Jaguars overseas in London, in what ESPN is dubbing the Toy Story game. All right, the Detroit Lions offense ran 64 plays for 358 yards, averaging 5.59 yards per play. 33 passes for 243, averaging 7.36, and 31 rushes for 115, averaging 3.71. They had 18 first downs, which brings their seasonal total to 62. They are 4 of 14 on third down on this game, 28.6%. 15 for 39 this season at 38.5%. No fourth down plays for the Detroit offense, so they remain 2 for 6. They had 10 penalties for 119 yards and 18 through 3 games for 206. Time of possession is 32 minutes, 57 seconds. The Atlanta Falcons ran 58 plays, totaling only 183 yards, averaging a meager 3.16 yards per play. 38 passes for 139, that's a 3.66 average, and only 44 yards on 20 rushes, that's a 2.2 average. Atlanta had 16 first downs. They now have 56 in 3 games. Third down conversions also 4 of 14, 28.6%. And for the season, 12 of 39 for 30.8%. They were 0 for 1 on fourth down. And for the season, 3 out of 5 for 60%. The Falcons had 4 penalties for 24 yards. And for the season, 16 for 177. Time of possession is 27 minutes and 3 seconds. Defensively for the Lions, they recorded 48 tackles, bringing their season total to 139. And they had 7 sacks in this game on Desmond Ridder, upping their season total to 8. They also had a forced fumble in the game. That's their second. And they doubled their passes defense total, adding 7 on Sunday and raising their season total to 14. No interceptions in this game. However, they do have 1 on the season. Same with defensive touchdowns. The Atlanta Falcons defense registered 35 tackles and 103 through 3 games. No sacks in this game on Jared Goff, so they remain with 3 on the season. No forced fumbles either. They remain with that 1. They had 4 passes defense, which brings their total to 13. They did have an interception, though, their 3rd of the season, and no defensive touchdowns. All right, the Lions offense through 3 games is averaging 381.3 yards per game, 269.7 passing, and 111.7 rushing. The Falcons defense is averaging 283.3 yards per game through 3, 155 yards passing on average, and 128.3 rushing. Detroit's defense is allowing 297.3 yards per game, 225.3 yards passing on average, and 72 yards rushing on average. And the Atlanta defense at 287.7 yards allowed per game, 170 passing, and 117.7 rushing. Closing line was Detroit -3 over under 47.5. This was a low-scoring game as the two teams combined for just 26 points, 541 yards, and 122 plays, averaging 4.43 yards per offensive play. I picked the Lions to win straight up and against the spread, and I'll tell you how I did on my week 3 picks later, so stick around. Moving along to the Buffalo Bills at the Washington Commanders, and this was all Buffalo in this one. 37-3 is the final. As the Bills move to 2-1, they will host the Miami Dolphins in a big AFC East matchup on Sunday, while the Washington Commanders, also 2-1, travel up the road to Philadelphia to face the first-place Eagles. All right, let's start with the Buffalo Bills offense. 65 plays for 386, averaging 5.94 per offensive play. 32 passes for 218, averaging 6.81, and 33 rushes for 168, averaging 5.09. The Bills had 20 first downs in this game. This brings their total to 68. Third downs were very good, 9 of 15, 60%. For the season, 21 of 41 for 51.2%. They were 0 for 1 on fourth down, and on the season, 3 out of 5. Buffalo had 6 penalties for 45 yards and 15 total for 115 through 3 games. Time of possession is 34 minutes and 39 seconds, putting real close to ball hawk territory. If you're not sure about a ball hawk, that is a team that possesses the ball for at least 35 minutes in a game, win or lose. The Washington offense ran only 43 plays for 230 yards, but they did average 5.35 yards per play. 29 passes for 125, averaging 4.31, and only 14 rushes for 105, which is a cool 7.5 yards per run. The Commanders have 15 first downs. This brings their seasonal total to 62. They were putrid on third down, 1 of 9 for 11.1%. And for the season, 8 for 31 and 25.8%. Washington was also 0 for 1 on fourth down, and on the season now 1 for 2. The Commanders had just 2 flags in the game for 15 yards, 18 total through 3 games for 155. Time of possession was 25 minutes and 21 seconds. The Buffalo Bills defense registered 31 tackles, bringing their seasonal total to 96. And how about this defense? Recording 9 sacks on Sam Howell. This brings their season total to 12. They also forced the fumble in this game, their third of the season. Passes defense totaled 5, and for the year, 13. And on top of those 9 sacks, they also had 4 interceptions in this game, bringing their seasonal total to 7. And they also scored a defensive touchdown in this game, the first of the season. The Commanders' defense recorded 47 tackles, bringing their season total to 125. They had no sacks in this game, so they remain with the 10 from the previous 2 games. No forced fumbles either. They remain with 3 of those. But they did have 8 passes defense, bringing their season total to 15. They added another interception, their second of the season. And no touchdowns as of yet for the Washington defense. All right, the Buffalo Bills offense is now averaging 383.3 yards per game, 234 yards passing, and 149.3 rushing. The Commander offense is averaging 288.7 yards per game, 182 passing, and 106.3 rushing. The Buffalo Bills defense is surrendering only 253 yards per game, 142.3 through the air and 110.7 on the ground. Washington's defense is surrendering 331.7 yards per game, 203 passing, and 128.7 rushing. Closing line was Buffalo -5, and the over-under was 44, and they nearly got there. Well, at least Buffalo nearly got them themselves. The two teams combined for 40 points, finishing under the total, 616 yards and 108 plays, averaging 5.7 yards per play. I picked the Bills both straight up and against the spread in this one. Now to the game that everyone's been talking about this week. The Miami Dolphins jack stomping the Denver Broncos 70-20. The 70 points are the second most scored. The 70 points are the second most points scored in a regular season game in NFL history, trailing the 1966 New York Giants, who scored 72 points in a game again back in 1966. The 70 points is also the third highest scoring game, regular season or playoffs, in NFL history. The all-time NFL record for points is the 1940 Chicago Bears, who dropped 73 points in the NFL championship. All right, so the Dolphins remain perfect. They are 3-0, but they have a tall test coming up in week 4, a trip to Orchard Park to face Josh Allen and the Bills. The Broncos still searching for their first victory of the season. They are now 0-3, and they're off to face another 0-3 team, the Chicago Bears, and they had a rough time with the Chiefs. More on that game later. All right, let's talk about this record-setting offensive day for the Miami Dolphins. They ran 71 plays for a staggering 726 yards, averaging 10.23 yards per game. They had 376 yards on 28 passes, averaging 13.43 yards per pass, and 350 yards rushing on 43 attempts. That's an average of 8.14. Miami finished with 30 first downs. They now have 82 through 3 games. 5 of 9 conversions on third down for 55.6% for the season, 13 of 28 for 46.4%. They went 1 for 3 on fourth down, 33.3%, and for the season, 2 for 4. They had 6 flags for 55 yards, 18 total penalties through 3 games for 139. Time of possession was 33 minutes and 21 seconds. As for the Denver Broncos offense, 58 plays for 363, averaging 6.26 yards per play. 38 passes for 294, averaging 7.74. And 20 rushes for 69 yards, averaging 3.45 yards per run. The Broncos only had 16 first downs in this game and 59 through 3 games. Third downs were not great. 3 of 12, 25%. On the season, they're 12 of 35 for 34.3%. Fourth down, 0 for 1, and for the season, 2 for 3. Denver had 7 penalties for 46 yards and 26 total for 187. Time of possession was 26 minutes and 39 seconds. The Dolphins defense recorded 33 tackles, and they now have 141 for the year. Only 1 sack the entire game for Miami's defense. That's their 7th. They added 2 forced fumbles to their tally, which is now 3. At 8 passes, defense brings their season total to 15. They added another interception, their 2nd of the season, and still no defensive touchdowns. For the Denver Broncos, they recorded 53 tackles, 127 through 3 games. 0 sacks in this game. They remain with 4. 0 forced fumbles. They remain with 1. 0 passes defense. They remain with 9. They have the 1 interception from earlier this year and no defensive touchdowns. Through 3 games, the Miami Dolphins offense is averaging 550.3 yards per game. Do the math. That's 1,651 yards in 3 games. That equals 550.3. They're averaging 362 yards passing and 188.3 rushing. Denver's offense, meanwhile, is averaging 340.7 per game, 245.7 through the air, and 95 on the ground. The Dolphins' defense is giving up 361.3 yards per game through 3 games, 231 yards passing, and 130.3 yards rushing. While the Broncos' defense is now allowing 458.3 yards after allowing 726 on Sunday, 280.7 yards per game passing, and 177.7 yards rushing per game. Closing line was Miami -6 over under 47. And they nearly doubled the Vegas total as the 2 teams combined to score 90 points. That's the most points scored in any NFL game in 2023. And this was also the highest offensive output between 2 teams this season. 1,089 yards and 129 plays, averaging a crisp 8.44 yards per play. I took Miami both straight up and against the spread. Now on to the first of our 3 upsets in week number 3. The Houston Texans going into Jacksonville and blasting Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars by a final of 37-17. Both teams are sitting at 1-2 at the bottom of the AFC South. The Texans return home to host Pittsburgh on Sunday, while the Jaguars play their annual home game in London next week against the Atlanta Falcons. We'll start off with the Texans offense. 56 plays for 366, averaging 6.54 yards per play. 30 passes for 280, averaging 9.33. 26 rushes, 86 yards, averaging 3.31. 15 first downs for Houston, 57 through 3 games. An impressive 9 of 15 for 60% on third down, and for the season, 25 out of 52, 48.1%. No fourth down plays in this game for the Texans. They remain at 3 for 6. They had 8 penalties for 75 yards. For the season, 20 for 183. Time of possession, 27 minutes and 57 seconds. The Jaguars offense recorded 69 plays for 404 yards, averaging 5.86 yards per play. 42 passes for 288, averaging 6.86. 27 rushes for 116, averaging 4.3. Jacksonville had 7 more first downs than the Texans. They had 22 and 60 through 3 games. They finished 5 of 13, 38.5% on third down, and for the season, 11 of 37 at 29.7%. Fourth downs were 0 for 1, and for the year, an abysmal 1 for 5 for 20%. Jacksonville had 6 penalties for 49 yards and only 12 through 3 games for 104. Time of possession is 32 minutes and 3 seconds. The Houston Texans defense recorded 48 tackles, bringing their seasonal total to 127. No sacks for the Houston defense this game. They remain with 3. They did force a fumble in this game, their third, and 5 passes defense, bringing their seasonal total to 7. They added another interception, their second, and no defensive touchdowns this week. Sorry, they still have the one from earlier this year. Jacksonville's defense records 41 tackles and 131 total through 3 games. They also had no sacks in this game, so they stay at 5. Also, 0 forced fumbles. They remain at 4. They did have a couple passes defended in this game, bringing their seasonal total to 15. No interceptions or touchdowns for the Jacksonville defense. They still have 2 interceptions from the 2 earlier games. All right, through 3 weeks, the Houston Texans offense is averaging 341 yards of total offense per game, 271 yards average on, or rather 271 yards passing on average, and 70 yards rushing on average. Jacksonville is averaging 339 yards per game, 240.7 passing, and 98.3 rushing. The Texans defense is surrendering 340.7 yards per game, 223.3 yards passing, 117.3 yards rushing. And the Jaguars defense is allowing 348.3 yards per game, 264.3 passing, and 84 yards rushing. Closing line was Jacksonville minus 7.5. Over under was 44. The 2 teams scored 10 more points than that at 54. So this went over the total. The 2 teams combined for 770 yards and 125 plays, averaging 6.16 yards per play. I picked Jacksonville straight up, but I took Houston with the points. All right, now to our second upset of the week, the Baltimore Ravens falling at home in overtime to the Indianapolis Colts, 22-19. Both teams are now 2-1 as the Colts return home to host the Rams, while the Ravens are off to Cleveland for a divisional tilt with the defensive-minded Browns. Let's start with the Indianapolis offense. 79 plays for 327, averaging 4.14 yards per play. 44 passes for 188, averaging 4.27. And 35 rushes for 139, averaging 3.97. The Colts had 19 first downs and 56 through 3 games. They were 8 for 22 on third down, 36.4%, and for the year, 16 of 46 for 34.8%. They were 0 for 1 on fourth downs, which makes them 1 for 5 through 3 games. Indy had 6 penalties for 31 yards and 18 total for 108. Time of possession was 36 minutes and 33 seconds. That makes Indianapolis ball hawks for week 3. The Baltimore Ravens offense ran 68 plays for 364 yards, averaging 5.35 yards per play. 31 passes for 178, averaging 5.74, and 37 rushes for 186, averaging 5.03. Baltimore had 20 first downs, bringing their season total to 64. They finished 6 of 16 on third down, 37.5% for the season, 22 of 48 for 45.8%. They attempted their first fourth down play of the season. They did not convert, so they are 0 for 1 in that category. Only 1 penalty the entire game for the Ravens for 5 yards, and 20 penalties through 3 games for 167. Time of possession is 32 minutes, 18 seconds. The Indianapolis defense records 58 tackles, bringing their seasonal total to 166. Add 4 more sacks to their total, which is now 12, as well as 4 forced fumbles, bringing them up to 8. Only 1 pass defense in this game, that's their 6th. No interceptions or touchdowns in this game, but they do have 1 of each this year. The Ravens defense records 55 tackles and in 3 weeks, 136. They also recorded 4 sacks in this game. Their season total is now 10. They forced 1 fumble in the game, their 2nd. They had 5 passes defensed. They're now up to 15. No interceptions or touchdowns against the Colts, but they do have an earlier interception this season. All right, through 3 games, the Indy offense is averaging 320 yards per game, 210 passing and 110 rushing. The Ravens offense is averaging 348 yards per game, 190 passing and 158 rushing. The Colts defense allows 365 yards, 250.7 passing and 114.3 rushing, while the Baltimore defense is surrendering 292.3, 200 passing on the nose and 92.3 rushing. Closing line was Baltimore minus 7.5. Over under was 44, just like the Jags game. Only this game just finished under the 44 points as the 2 teams combined for 41 points, 691 yards, and 147 plays, averaging 4.7 yards per play. I took the Ravens to win straight up, but I took Indianapolis plus the points. Okay, next up is the Los Angeles Chargers defeating the Minnesota Vikings 28-24. LA gets its first win of the season. They're 1-2. And next up, a home date with the Las Vegas Raiders. While the Minnesota Vikings, who went 11-1 in 1-score games last season, including the playoffs, 0-3 in those same games this year. And they visit the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte on Sunday. And they will be facing off with a familiar face in Panthers wide receiver Adam Thielen. Starting off with the Chargers offense, they ran 63 plays for 475 yards, averaging 7.54 yards per play. 48 passes for 445, averaging 9.27, and only 15 rushes for 30 yards, which is exactly 2 yards per run. The Chargers had 24 first downs, bringing their season total to 73. They finished 5 of 11 on third down for 45.5%. And through 3 games, they are 16 of 40 on third down for 40%. LA was 1 for 2 on fourth down for 50%. And for the season, 4 of 6 for 66.7%. Chargers were hit hard with the flags. They had 12 of them for 94 yards. They now have 22 penalties in 3 games for 207 yards. Time of possession was 26 minutes and 47 seconds. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Vikings offense also recorded 475 yards, but on 74 plays. Average is 6.42 yards per play. 345 passing yards on 50 attempts. That's a 6.9 average. 130 yards on 24 rushes. That's a 5.42 average. Minnesota finishes with 29 first downs, and in 3 games this year, they have 64. They were worse than LA on third down in this game, 4 of 14 for 28.6%. and 18 of 38 all told this year for 47.4%. They went 2 for 3 on fourth down at 66.7%, and they are now at 3 for 4 on fourth down in 3 games at 75%. The Vikings had 6 penalties for 45 yards and 14 total for 105. Time of possession was 33 minutes and 13 seconds. The Los Angeles Chargers defense recorded 52 tackles, bringing their season total to 134. And they had no problems going after Kirk Cousins. They sacked him 4 times. Their sack total through 3 games is at 9. They recorded their first fumble of the season. They added 8 more passes defense, bringing their season total to 19. They added another interception, their second, and no defensive touchdowns. The Minnesota Vikings defense recorded 44 tackles and 139 through 3 games. They only had 1 sack on Justin Herbert. That is their 6th sack of the season. They forced 4 fumbles in this game, upping their total to 5. And only 3 passes defense, bringing their season total to 12. They had no interceptions or defensive touchdowns in this game, but they do have 1 INT from earlier this year. Through 3 games, the Chargers averaged 389.3 yards of total offense, 308.3 passing yards, and 108.3 rushing yards. The Minnesota Vikings offense is averaging 406 yards per game. They're over 1,200 yards through 3 games. 339.7 passing and only 66.3 rushing. As for the Chargers defense, they allow 450.3 yards per game, 337 passing and 113.3 rushing. The Vikings defense surrenders 382.3 yards per game, 261.7 passing and 120.7 rushing. Closing line was a pick'em. The over-under was 52.5, and they just missed it by that half point as the 2 teams combined for 52 points, 950 yards, 475 on each side, and 137 plays, averaging nearly 7 yards a play at 6.93. I did take the Vikings to win straight up, and I had Minnesota with the points. But since this game finished in a pick'em, that's going to be a push. And I did lose the straight up pick. Next up, the New England Patriots continue their dominance of the New York Jets, winning 15-10. It is the 15th consecutive win for New England in the series. As the Patriots get their first win of the season, they're 1-2, and they are off to Jerry World on Sunday to face Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. The Jets, also 1-2, will be hosting Sunday Night Football against the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. We'll start off with the New England offense. 69 plays for 358, averaging 5.19 yards per play. 29 passes for 201, averaging 6.93. 40 rushes for 157, averaging 3.93. The Patriots had 17 first downs. Season total is now 64. They were 8 of 19 on third down at 42.1%, and for the year, 20 of 49 for 40.8%. No fourth down plays in the game for the Patriots offense, so they remain at 2 for 6 for the season. They had 6 penalties for 43 yards, 18 total for 138. Time of possession was 31 minutes and 52 seconds. The New York Jets offense, 58 plays for just 171 yards, averaging only 2.95 yards per play. Not good. 36 passes for 133, averaging 3.69, and 22 rushes for a meager 38 yards, averaging 1.73 yards per run. That's not good either. The Jets, only 12 first downs in this game, and through 3 games, 37. That's a little more than 12 per game. They were terrible on third downs, 2 of 14 for 14.3%, 8 of 37 for the year at 21.6%. They went 1 for 2 on fourth down, 50%, and for the season, 3 of 4, 75%. New York had just 3 penalties in the game for 15 yards and only 10 through 3 games for 54. Time of possession was 28 minutes and 8 seconds. The New England defense recorded 41 tackles, 121 through 3 games, 3 sacks in the game on Zach Wilson. That's 7 all told this year. They forced their second fumble this season. 6 passes defense brings them to 13. They had no interceptions or touchdowns, but they do have 1 interception from earlier this year. The New York Jets defense records 54 tackles, 172 through 3 games. No sacks in this game for New York's defense. They remain with 6. They also didn't force a fumble in this game, so they remain at 2. But they have 4 passes defense, bringing their season total to 10. No interceptions or no touchdowns in week 3 for the Jets, but they do have 3 interceptions from earlier this year. Through 3 weeks, the New England Patriots offense is averaging 342.7 yards per game, 235.7 passing, and 107 rushing. The Jets offense is averaging only 225 yards, 133.7 passing, and 91.3 rushing. The Patriots defense averages 270.3 yards allowed per game, 177 passing, and 93.3 rushing. The Jets defense is giving up 351.3 yards per game, 222 passing, and 129.3 rushing. Closing line was New England minus 2.5. Over-under was 35.5. The 2 teams would combine for the lowest point total of the 16 games this week, with 25 finishing well under 35.5. They combined for 529 yards and 127 plays, averaging 4.17 yards per play. I took the Patriots both straight up and against the spread. If you're joining me late, you're watching the week that was, as I run through the team statistical numbers from every game of week 3 of the 2023 NFL season. Coming up at the end of the recap is my week 4 power rankings, so make sure you stick around for that. Moving on to the Green Bay Packers, who trailed 17-0 in the fourth quarter, scored 18 unanswered points, and stunned the New Orleans Saints 18-17. Now, the story out of this game is Derek Carr left this game with a separated shoulder and did not return. Chances are he will not play against the Buccaneers next week. We shall see. So the Saints are 2-1, and as I mentioned, they'll host Tampa Bay. It'll be a quick turnaround for the 2-1 Packers. They play Thursday night against the Detroit Lions. Let's start off with the Packers offense, who ran 71 plays for 340 yards, averaging 4.79 yards per play. 45 passes for 245, averaging 5.44. 26 rushes for 95 yards, averaging 3.65. The Packers had 21 first downs, 53 through 3 games. They finished 8 of 18 on third down, and on the year through 3 games, 20 of 43. 44.4% in week 3 and 46.5% this season. They went 1 for 3 on fourth down putting them at 2 for 6 on fourth down, both 33.3%. Green Bay did have a lot of penalties, though. 11 flags for 90 yards, 27 total for 220. Time of possession, 32 minutes, 35 seconds. The New Orleans Saints offense recorded 56 plays for 252, averaging 4.5 yards per play. 34 passes for 175, an average of 5.15, and 22 rushes for 77, which is 3.5 yards per run. The Saints had 15 first downs, 53 total through 3 games. They were 4 of 14 on third down, 28.6%, and just 18 of 46 in 3 games at 39.1%. New Orleans would attempt their first fourth down of the season and convert, making them 1 for 1. The Saints had 7 penalties for 102 yards. In 3 games, they have 17 for 179. Time of possession is 27 minutes and 25 seconds. The Packers defense registered 45 tackles. Their season total is 146. They had 4 sacks on Saints quarterbacks, be it Derek Carr or Jameis Winston. It didn't matter. Their season total was at 9. No forced fumbles for the Green Bay defense. They remain with the one from earlier. 6 passes defense brings their season total up to 15. No interceptions or touchdowns for the Packers D. They have 2 interceptions and 1 defensive touchdown thus far this year. The Saints defense records 33 tackles and 108 through 3 games. Only 1 sack in this game. Their season total is now 8. They also didn't force a fumble in this game, so they remain with the 1. They did double their season total of passes defended to 26 after recording 13. And the 26 passes defense leads the NFL. They added another interception, their 4th of the season, and no defensive touchdowns. Through 3 weeks, the New England offense averages 297.7 yards per game, 207.3 passing, and 90.3 rushing. The New Orleans offense averages 314.7 yards per game, 221.3 passing, and 93.3 rushing. The Patriots defense allows an average of 336.3 yards per game after Sunday, 189.7 passing, and 136.7 rushing. While the Saints defense allows only 288 yards, 188.3 passing, and 99.7 rushing. Closing line was New Orleans -1.5, and the over-under was 41.5. Another touchdown would have sealed the total here, as the 2 teams combined for 35 points, 592 yards, and 127 offensive plays, averaging 4.66 yards per play. I took the Packers both straight up and against the spread. The final of the early afternoon games on Sunday was the Cleveland Browns undressing the Tennessee Titans 27-3. The Browns are now in a tie for first place in the AFC North at 2-1. Next up, they will host the Baltimore Ravens, aka the Old Browns. The Tennessee Titans fall to 1-2, and they will host Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And I'll tell you how the Bengals fared against the LA Rams in the second of the 2 Monday night games at the end of this recap. So stay tuned. The Browns offense recorded 64 plays for 341, averaging 5.33 yards per play. 33 passes for 263, averaging 7.97, so nearly 8 yards per pass. 31 rushes for 78 yards, averaging 2.52 yards per run. Cleveland had 23 first downs and 64 through 3 games. Third down conversion, 6 of 13, 46.2%. Through 3 games, 15 of 43 for 34.9%. 1 for 1 on fourth down, and on the year 1 for 3. The Browns had 5 penalties for 46 yards, 18 total for 170. Time of possession, 38 minutes, 29 seconds. This puts the Browns in ball hawk territory. For the Tennessee Titans, their offense was non-existent. 40 plays for 94 yards, averaging 2.35 yards per play. That's it. 25 passes for 68 yards, averaging 2.72. 15 rushes for only 26 yards, averaging 1.73. As I said, Tennessee's offense is non-existent. They had 6 first downs in the entire game. Their season total is now 43, which has to put them at or near the bottom in the NFL in this category. Third downs, terrible. 2 of 12, 16.7%. And on the year, 27%, 10 of 37. They did go 1 for 1 on fourth down, and for the season, 1 for 2. They had 8 flags for 80 yards, 21 total through 3 games for 170. Time of possession, real low, 21 minutes and 31 seconds. Browns defense records 32 tackles, 94 through 3 games, 5 sacks in the day, or 5 sacks on the day of Ryan Tannehill. That brings Cleveland's sack total up to 9. They forced their second fumble of the season to go along with 4 passes defense, bringing their season total to 14. No interceptions or touchdowns for the Cleveland defense, but they do have 1 INT from earlier. The Tennessee defense, 49 tackles. Through 3 games, they have 140. They did sack Deshaun Watson 3 times. 10 is their season total. 2 forced fumbles in the game doubles their total up to 4. They did not record a pass defended, so they remain at 7. No interceptions or touchdowns. And like Cleveland, Tennessee has an interception from earlier this year. Through 3 games, the Browns' offense is averaging 366.3 yards, 205.7 passing, and 160.7 rushing. Tennessee averages only 239.7 yards per game, 149.7 passing, and 90 rushing. Browns defense allowing only 163.7 yards per game, 111.7 passing, and 52 yards rushing. In fact, they've only allowed 56 rush attempts in 3 games. The Titans defense gives up 344.7 yards per game, 275.3 passing, and 69.3 rushing. Hold on a second. Closing line was Cleveland minus 3.5. Over under was 38. 2 teams combined for only 30 points, 435 yards, and 104 plays. So not a lot of offense by either team. Average is 4.18 yards per play. I picked Tennessee both straight up and with the points. And again, I will tell you my straight up and ATS picks at the end of the rundown. We have 6 more games left as we transition now to the 4 o'clock games from Sunday. Starting off with the Seattle Seahawks beating the Carolina Panthers 37-27. The Seahawks are now 2-1 and will visit New York to play the Giants on Monday Night Football, while the 0-3 Panthers return home to host the Minnesota Vikings, who are also winless. Seattle's offense registered 69 plays for 425 yards, averaging 6.16 yards per play. 36 passes for 279, averaging 7.75, and 33 rushes for 146, averaging 4.42. The Seahawks had 27 first downs in the game and 68 through 3 games. They were not good on third down, however. 3 of 13, 23.1%. 10 of 33 through 3 games at 30.3%. They remained perfect on fourth down as they went 1 for 1 on Sunday and 3 for 3 for the season. The Seahawks had 8 penalties for 82 yards. The Seahawks had 8 penalties for 82 yards and 24 total flags for 217. Time of possession was 30 minutes, 28 seconds. So this was nearly split down the middle as far as time of possession is concerned. The Carolina offense ran 72 plays for 378, averaging 5.25 yards per play. 58 passes for 334, averaging 5.76. 14 rushes for only 44 yards. That's an average of 3.14 yards per play or rush. The Panthers had 23 first downs and 57 through 3 games. Third down conversions were very good for the Panthers. 10 of 19, 52.6%, and 19 of 47 in 3 games, averaging 40.4%. 0 for 1 on fourth down. They are now 1 for 4 for the season. The Seahawks defense records 44 tackles, bringing their season total to 140. They had 3 sacks on Andy Dalton, who played for the injured Bryce Young. Seattle's sack total is now at 5. They remain at 2 forced fumbles. They had 8 passes defense, bringing their season total to 12. No interceptions or touchdowns in this game. They have 1 of each from earlier this year. The Panthers offense, or rather the Panthers defense, records 49 tackles and brings their season total to 136. They had 2 sacks on Geno Smith, bringing their season total to 10, which is twice the sacks that the Seahawks have. They stay at 1 forced fumble. They have 3 passes defense, bringing their season total to 14. They added their second interception of the season, and Carolina's defense has no touchdowns. Through 3 weeks, the Seahawks offense averages 332.7 yards per game, 228.3 passing, and 104.3 rushing. The Panthers offense averages 299.3 yards per game, 200 yards passing, and 99.3 rushing. Seattle's defense allows 407.3 yards per game, 328 passing, and 79.3 rushing. Panthers defense allows 329 yards per game, 192.3 passing, and 136.7 rushing. Closing line is Seattle minus 4.5, over under is 43. The 2 teams combined for 64 points, 803 yards, and 141 plays, averaging 5.7 yards a play. I took the Seahawks both straight up and against the spread. Up next, the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, with Taylor Swift in attendance, blowing out the Chicago Bears 41-10. The Chiefs are now 2-1. Next up, they are off to the Meadowlands to battle the Jets on Sunday Night Football, while the 0-3 Bears host the 0-3 Denver Broncos on Sunday afternoon. All right, starting off with the Chiefs offense. 75 plays for 456 yards, averaging 6.08 yards per play. 38 passes for 303, averaging 7.97. And 37 rushes for 153, averaging 4.14. Kansas City had 31 first downs, 67 through 3 games. Very, very impressive on third down on Sunday. 10 of 14, 71.4%. On the season, they're 19 of 41 for 46.3%. No fourth down plays for the Chiefs, so they remain perfect at 2 for 2. Only 3 penalties in the game for Kansas City for 15 yards and 18 total for 134. Time of possession is 36 minutes and 13 seconds, putting Kansas City in ball hawk territory. As for the Chicago Bears offense, these numbers are not pretty. 48 plays for 203 yards, averaging 4.23 yards per play. 22 passes for 87, averaging 3.95, and 26 rushes for 116, averaging 4.46. The Bears had 11 first downs the entire game. 11. 47 through 3 games. They were just 4 of 12 on third down, 33.3%, and 13 of 38 through 3 games at 34.2%. They went 1 for 2 on Sunday on fourth down, and for the season, 2 of 4, both 50%. Chicago had 6 penalties for 32 yards and 18 total for 121. Time of possession is 23 minutes and 47 seconds. The Chiefs' defense recorded 32 tackles and won 12 through 3 games. 3 sacks on Justin Fields, bringing their season total to 8. 1 forced fumble, that's their third. 3 passes defense, their season total was now 13. They recorded their first interception of 2023 with no defensive touchdowns. The Bears defense records 48 tackles and 135 through 3 games. No sacks in the game on Patrick Mahomes. They only have 1 through 3 games. That's the lowest in the NFL. They also had no forced fumbles, so they remain with the 2 from earlier this year. They had 4 passes defense. Season total is now 9. They had their first 2 interceptions of the season and no defensive touchdowns. In 3 games, the Chiefs offense averages 390.3 yards per game, 275.7 passing, and 114.7 rushing. Chicago's offense is only averaging 250 yards a game, 148.3 passing, and 101.7 rushing. The Chiefs' defense averages 280.7 yards allowed, 178 passing, and 102.7 rushing. The Bears' defense allows 407.3 yards, same average as the Seahawks, 285.6 passing, and 121.7 rushing. Closing line was Kansas City minus 11.5, over-unders 48. The 2 teams combined for 51 points, so this game finished slightly over. The 2 teams combined for 659 yards and 123 plays, averaging 5.36 yards per play. I took the Chiefs both straight up and against the spread. That brings us to our third and final upset of the week. The Arizona Cardinals, the team many think would tank for Caleb Williams. They once again knock off the Dallas Cowboys, winning 28-16. And since 2008, this is Arizona's 7th win against Dallas in their last 8 games in the series. The Cardinals are now 1-2, and next up, a tall task with the undefeated 49ers in San Francisco. While the 2-1 Cowboys return home to host Mac Jones and the New England Patriots. We'll start with the Cards offense. 51 plays for an even 400 yards, averaging 7.84 yards per play. 21 passes for 178, averaging 8.48. 30 rushes for 222, averaging 7.4 yards per run. Arizona had 20 first downs and 57 through 3 games. They went 5 of 10 on third down for 50%. For the season, 13 of 34 for 38.2%. And no fourth downs in the game and 0 for 1 so far this year. The Cardinals had 8 penalties for 69 yards and 25 total for 248. Time of possession is 25 minutes and 27 seconds. Cowboys offense ran 73 plays for 416 yards, 5.7 yards per play. 40 passes for 231, averaging 5.78. 33 rushes for 185, averaging 5.61. The Cowboys had 26 yards, or rather 21st. Let me try that again. The Cowboys has 26 first downs in the game and 70 through 3 games. There we go. They finished 9 of 16 on the day on third down at 56.3%. And 24 for 47 through 3 weeks at 51.1%. They failed to convert their first fourth down play of the season, making them 0 for 1. The reason why the Cowboys lost, they got hit hard with the penalties. Dallas had 13 flags for 107 and 24 total for 180. Time of possession is 34 minutes and 33 seconds. So Dallas slightly outplayed Arizona, but it's the penalties which cost them this game. The Arizona defense records 51 tackles. They're up to 141 through 3 games. They would sack Dak Prescott 2 times, bringing their season total to 11. They remain with 2 forced fumbles. All right. And they had 9 passes defense, bringing their season total to an NFC leading 23. They added another interception, their third of the season, and no defensive touchdowns, but they do have one from earlier this season. The Dallas defense records 37 tackles and 107 through 3. They would sack Josh Dobbs twice. Season total is up to 12, one more than the Cardinals. No forced fumbles for the Dallas defense either. They remain at 4. Only 1 pass defense in the game, their 16th of the year. No interceptions on Sunday, but they do have 5 from earlier this season, including a 3 INT game. No defensive touchdowns on Sunday for Dallas. They have the 1 defensive score from earlier. Through 3 games, the Arizona Cardinals offense averages 329.7 yards per game, 173.3 passing, and 156.3 rushing. The Cowboys offense averages 354.3 yards per game. 207.3 passing and 147 rushing. The Cardinals defense allows 367.7 yards per game, 233 passing and 134.7 rushing. The Dallas defense allows 262 yards a game, 130.7 passing and 131.3 rushing. Closing line was Dallas minus 11. Over-under was 44. And they pushed the total as the 2 teams combined for exactly 44 points. 816 yards and 124 offensive plays, averaging 6.58 yards per play. I took the Cowboys both straight up and against the spread, and you pretty much know how that went. All right, now to Sunday Night Football. The Pittsburgh Steelers take down the Las Vegas Raiders at the Death Star 23-18. Pittsburgh improves to 2-1, and they are off to the Space City to play the Houston Texans on Sunday, while the 1-2 Raiders are off to SoFi to battle the Chargers. Starting off with the Steelers offense, 59 plays for 333, averaging 5.64 yards per play. 28 passes for 228, 8.14 average, 31 rushes, 105 yards, 3.39 average. The Steelers had 17 first downs, 41 through 3 games. 6 of 15 on third down, 40%. 15 of 44 on the season for 34.1%. No fourth down plays in the game for the Steelers. They're a perfect 1-for-1. 6 penalties for 45 yards brings them to 17 for 156. Time of possession, 30 minutes, 3 seconds. The Raiders offense, 63 plays, 362 yards, averaging 5.75 yards per play. 44 passes for 293, averaging 6.66. 19 rushes, 69 yards, averaging 3.63. Vegas had 19 first downs and 54 through 3 games. 4 of 13 on third down for 30.8%. 12 of 31 on the season for 38.7%. 1 of 2 on fourth down on Sunday, and 2 of 3 for the year. The Raiders had 7 penalties for 60 yards and 19 total for 187. Time of possession, 29 minutes, 57 seconds. So in this game, time of possession was nearly divided evenly. The Steelers defense recorded 45 tackles, 152 through 3 games. They would sack Jimmy Garoppolo 4 times. That's 13 sacks on the year, which leads the NFL. They remain with 7 forced fumbles. They had 6 passes defensed Sunday night, bringing them to 19. And how about 3 interceptions in this game and 4 in 2023? No defensive touchdowns Sunday night. They do have 2 defensive scores from earlier. The Raider defense, 38 tackles, 134 through 3 games, 1 sack on Kenny Pickett. That's their 5th of the season. They have no forced fumbles on the season. They are one of 2 teams with no forced fumbles, the 49ers being the other. 3 passes defense brings them to 6. No interceptions or defensive touchdowns, but they do have 1 INT from an earlier game. Through 3 weeks, the Steelers offense only averaging 275.7 yards per game, 208.7 passing, and 67 rushing. Raiders offense averages 287.7 yards a game, 226 passing, and 61.7 rushing. Pittsburgh's defense allows 387 yards, 235.3 passing, and 151.7 rushing. While the Raiders defense allows 347.7, 220.3 passing, and 127.3 rushing. Closing line was Las Vegas -3, over under 43.5. And they just missed the total as the 2 teams combined for 41 points, 695 yards, and 122 plays, averaging 5.7 yards per play. I took the Raiders straight up and against the spread, and once again, you can pretty much tell how that went. All right. We'll close things out with the Monday Night Football doubleheader. First, the Philadelphia Eagles playing arguably their best game of 2023 as they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a driving rainstorm 25-11. Philadelphia remains undefeated. Next up, a tough division task with the Washington Commanders back at the Link. The Bucs suffered their first loss of the year. They're 2-1, and they're off to the Superdome to face the New Orleans Saints, more than likely with Jameis Winston under center and not Derek Carr. The Philly offense records 77 plays for 472 yards, averaging 6.13 yards per play. 37 passes for 271, 7.32 average. 40 rushes for 201, 5.03 average. Philadelphia had 27 first downs and 68 through 3 games. They went 10 of 16 on third down, 62.5%, very nice, and 20 of 43 through 3 games for 46.5%. They were 2 for 3 on fourth down at 66.7%, and for the season, 3 of 5 for 60%. The Eagles had just 3 penalties for 20 yards and 15 through 3 games for 114. Time of possession, 38 minutes and 55 seconds. This puts Philadelphia in ball hog territory for the second straight week. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they ran 42 plays for only 174 yards, averaging 4.14 yards per play. 25 passes for 133, averaging 5.32, and only 17 rushes for 41 yards, averaging 2.41. Tampa Bay had 12 first downs, bringing them to 47 on 3 games. They went 5 of 10 on third down, 50%, 19 of 42 through 3 weeks at 45.2%. No fourth down plays. They remain a perfect 2 for 2. The Bucs have four penalties for 20 yards and 14 through 3 games for 93. Time of possession, 21 minutes and 5 seconds. The Eagles defense records 29 tackles, bringing them up to 115 through 3 games. 2 more sacks on the season gives them 6. 2 more forced fumbles gives them 8. And 2 passes defense brings them up to 14. They added another interception, their second of the year. No defensive touchdowns this week. They did have the Darius Slay pick 6 in the Patriots game in the opener. The Buccaneers defense records 53 tackles, 131 through 3 games. Only 1 sack on Jalen Hurts. That's their 9th of the season. They remain with 2 forced fumbles. 3 passes defense brings them up to 13. They did intercept Jalen Hurts twice, though. So now Tampa Bay has 5 interceptions. No defensive touchdowns. They had 1 from earlier. Through 3 weeks, the Philadelphia offense averages 384.3 yards per game, 198.7 passing, and 185.7 rushing. The Buccaneers offense averages 259.7 yards per game, 206.3 passing, and 78 rushing. Philly's defense allows 310 yards per game, 261.7 passing, and a league-leading 48.3 rushing, while Tampa's defense allows 359 yards, 256 passing, and 103 rushing. Closing line was Philly minus 5.5 over under 44. 2 teams combined for 36 points, 646 yards, and 119 plays, averaging 5.43 yards per play. I took Philly to win straight up, but I took Tampa Bay with the points. And the final game of the week, the Cincinnati Bengals finally in the win column, beating the Los Angeles Rams 19-16. Both teams are now 1-2. The Bengals are off to Nashville to battle Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans, while the LA Rams stay out east to play the Indianapolis Colts, the surprise leaders of the AFC South, through 3 games. All right. The Bengals offense, 72 plays for 309, averaging 4.29 yards per play, 49 passes for 242, 4.94 average, 23 runs for 67, 2.91 average. 19 first downs for the Bengals in 44 through 3 games. They went 5 of 17 on third down, 29.4%, and 17 of 47 through 3 weeks at 36.2%. They went 1 for 1 on fourth down on Monday, 2 for 3 on the season at 66.7%. Cincinnati had 7 penalties for 49 yards and 16 total for 79. Time of possession, exactly 36 minutes. This puts the Bengals in ball hog territory. All right, the Bengals, or not the Bengals defense, that's coming up after we look at the LA offense. 46 plays for 292, but they did average 6.35 yards per play. 33 passes for 221, averaging 6.7. Only 13 rushes for 71 yards, but a good average of 5.46. The Rams have 15 first downs and 70 through 3. Only 1 of 11 on third down Monday night. That's 9.1%. Not good. On the year, 19 third down conversions on 42 attempts at 45.2%. Fourth downs, 1 for 1. Yep, fourth downs are 1 for 1 and 3 for 4 in the season for 75%. LA have 4 penalties for 28 yards and 17 total for 136. Time of possession exactly 24 minutes. The Cincinnati defense records 36 tackles, 135 on the season. They would sack Matthew Stafford 6 times, bringing their sack total up to 9. They still have 1 forced fumble. They had 5 passes defense, bringing them to 13. 2 more interceptions, numbers 2 and 3 on the season, and no defensive touchdowns. The Los Angeles defense records 43 tackles, 104 through 3 games. They would sack Joe Shiesty twice and 5 for the season. They also have just the 1 forced fumble from earlier. 6 passes defense brings their total all the way up to 8. They record their first interception of 2023 and no defensive touchdowns. Through 3 games, the Cincinnati Bengals offense is only averaging 244.3 yards per game, 175 passing, and 69.3 rushing. The Rams offense averages 368 yards a game, 284 passing, and 84 rushing. The Bengals defense allows 352.3 yards per game, 200.7 passing, and 151.7 rushing. While the Rams defense allows 284.7, 181 passing, and 103.7 rushing. Closing line is Cincinnati -3, over under is 45.5. The 2 teams combined for 35 points, 601 yards, and 118 plays, averaging 5.09 yards per play. Now, I had 2 separate picks for this game. It all tied into Joe Burrow playing. They said that, I think they said on Sunday night that Joe Burrow would play. So therefore I went with the Bengals 27-20. And I took them with the points. And that total would push. So how did I do with my picks? I went 10-6 in my straight up picks and 10-4-2 in my ATS picks. And for the year, I am 31-17 in my straight up picks at 646 win at a 646 win percentage. And 24-18-6 in my ATS picks, 563. We had 5 ball hawks in week number 3. The Cleveland Browns for the 3rd consecutive week. Both the San Francisco 49ers and Philadelphia Phillies for the 2nd straight week. And first-time ball hawks this year include the Indianapolis Colts and the Kansas City Chiefs. The top ball hawks, the team that possessed the ball the most time of any team this week, is the San Francisco 49ers at 39 minutes and 10 seconds. Across the 16 games, there were 706 points scored, and through 3 weeks, 2,158 points scored across 48 games. So that's the recap. Now let's jump into my week 4 power rankings as we wrap things up here. And starting at the bottom are the Chicago Cubs. It's still baseball season, but I'm thinking football. Number 32 is the Chicago Bears at 0-3. Previously at 32. Next game up is the Denver Broncos at home. Speaking of the Denver Broncos, they fell 3 spots to number 31. Well, when you give up 70 points in a game, you deserve to drop. Broncos are also 0-3, and they will be facing the aforementioned Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. So whoever loses this game will be the 32nd ranked team in week 5. Down 1 spot to number 30 are the Carolina Panthers, also 0-3. They will host the Minnesota Vikings. Dropping 2 spots to number 29, the New York Giants at 1-2. And they will host the Seahawks on Monday night. Up 3 spots to number 28, the Houston Texans at 1-2. They host Kenny Pickett and the Steelers this week. Slipping a spot to number 27, the Las Vegas Raiders at 1-2. They're off to LA to play the Chargers. Down 2 spots to 26, the Minnesota Vikings at 0-3. And they're off to Carolina to play the Panthers. Up 5 spots, number 25, the Arizona Cardinals. They are 1-2, and they're playing the 49ers at Levi's Stadium. Down 2 spots to number 24, the Tennessee Titans at 1-2. They'll host Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Falling 4 spots to number 23, the Washington Commanders at 2-1. They are in Philadelphia to face the Eagles. Slipping a spot to number 22, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 2-1. They are in New Orleans this week. Plummeting 7 spots to number 21 are the New York Football Jets at 1-2. They're hosting the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday night this week. Up 5 spots to number 20, the Los Angeles Chargers at 1-2. They host the Raiders. Up a spot to number 19, the Los Angeles Rams at 1-2. They are in Indianapolis. And speaking of I'll get to them in a second. Falling 7 spots to number 18 are the Jacksonville Jaguars at 1-2. They will face the Atlanta Falcons in a home game in London on Sunday. Now we can talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Up 6 spots to number 17. They will host the Rams. Down 3 spots to number 16 are the New Orleans Saints at 2-1. They host Tampa Bay. Down 3 spots to number 15, the Atlanta Falcons at 2-1. They play a road game with the Jaguars in London. Up 1 spot to number 14, the Green Bay Packers, 2-1. They play Thursday night against the Lions. Up 4 spots to number 13, the New England Patriots at 1-2. They are in Dallas this week. Up 4 spots as well to number 12, the Cleveland Browns, hosting the Baltimore Ravens. They are 2-1. Down 2 spots to number 11, the Cincinnati Bengals at 1-2. They are in Nashville to face the Titans. That brings us to our top 10. At number 10, up 5 spots, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They will pay a visit to Houston to battle CJ Stroud and the Texans. Slipping 1 spot to number 9 with a 2-1 record are the Seattle Seahawks. They play the Giants in New York on Monday night. Up 2 spots to number 8, the Detroit Lions at 2-1. They play tomorrow night at Green Bay. Slipping 3 spots to number 7, the Baltimore Ravens, following their overtime loss to the Colts. They are 2-1, and this week they are at Cleveland. Last week's number 1, the Dallas Cowboys, falls all the way to number 6 after that upset loss to the Cardinals. They are 2-1, and they will host the New England Patriots on Sunday. Up 1 spot to number 5, the Philadelphia Eagles at 3-0. They host the Washington Commanders. Also up 1 spot to number 4, the Buffalo Bills at 2-1. They will host our number 3 team, the Miami Dolphins, at 3-0, up 4 spots from last week. So it's the Dolphins and Bills, number 3 versus number 4 in Orchard Park on Sunday. Can't wait for that one. Inching up a spot to number 3, or rather number 2, the Kansas City Chiefs, reigning Super Bowl champions, 2-1 record, and they play the Jets on Sunday night. And reclaiming the number 1 spot for week number 4, the San Francisco 49ers, easily the most complete team in all of football, with a 3-0 record and a home game with the Arizona Cardinals, in which they are favored by 2 touchdowns. I will tell you who I pick tomorrow in my week 4 picks video, so join me for that. Oh, and I got some college football to talk about yet today. We'll have to go through the college football rankings. That's next. And then after that, the week 5 college football television schedule. So join me for those videos as well. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off for now. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.